Thank you very much. I give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Thank you, President. I'd like to thank Undersecretary General Rosemary DiCarlo, head of the EU delegation Olaf Skog, and the facilitator of the 2231 format, permanent representative of Ireland, Geraldine Byrne-Nason, for their briefings. Today's meeting is taking place in a completely different situation than 6 months ago. We've left behind us the illegitimate attempts by the United States to restore the activity of UN sanctions against Iran and introduce against it, through the Security Council, of a regime of an arms embargo of unprecedented strictness. The Council practically unanimously rejected these destructive moves. At the beginning of this year, our American colleagues officially withdrew their illegitimate claims to trigger a snapback. So we've turned the page once and for all on this issue. The diplomatic process is in full swing in Vienna to restore the fully fledged functioning of the JCPOA, and we're already seeing the profile of a future agreement. There's a general understanding of how to move forward to the goals set before us. The current report of the Secretary General is another signal that the overall dynamic compared to last year is moving in the right direction. It confirms that the regime set down in Resolution 2231 continues to operate. There are no extraordinary events that could have influenced this were not mentioned in the report. I want to separately note the conclusion of the Secretary General in paragraph 7 that in the reporting period there were no violations identified in terms of imports of Iran of goods related to nuclear activity in contravention of paragraph 2 of Annex B of Resolution 2231. And also, the Secretary General did not receive any official information regarding shipments in breach of paragraph 4 of Annex B of Resolution 2231, including in terms of exports from Iran related to the ballistic missiles. This is paragraph 9 of the report. I want to stress that these are the conclusions of the Secretary General, not of the Russian Federation. We, in our letter, drafted in connection with the statements of several countries, we explained in detail that the accusations of our Western colleagues about the ballistic program of Iran have no basis. These are simply statements similar to highly likely, based on the notion of highly likely. There was no single fact mentioned in their accusations. This is also confirmed by the Secretary General. It's strange and unacceptable, doubly unacceptable, to hear that there are violations of the ballistic provisions of Resolution 2231 from the representative of the United States, who themselves continue to violate this resolution. The report of the facilitator of the 2231 format is balanced also overall. I think we have to pay tribute to the efforts of the Irish facilitator, Ambassador Nason, and her team. We had some specific comments on this document. However, in a show of our constructive approach and with a view to the unity of the 2231 format, decided to support the consensus that is forming around it. There's no doubt that any process of stabilization requires time and cannot be a walk in the park. It would be naive to expect that the detritus that was left by the unilateral withdrawal by the United States from the JCPOA and their subsequent steps to destroy the pact, it would be illusory to think that it would be magically possible to clean this up in a few days or weeks. We all need to be realistic. Restoring the normal functioning of the JCPOA requires patience, perseverance, and the political will of all the parties. We have for many years appealed to the common sense of our partners, trying to explain to them a very simple logic. If the goal is to reach an agreement, then you should not demonize Iran and make it into the source of all evil. Iran is a fully fledged partner with its own interests, concerns, and perceptions of risks in the area of national security. As a sovereign state, it has every right to this. In international relations, countries do not have to like each other. However, they must treat each other with respect. As we all recall, par in parem non habet imperium in Latin. If this principle is adhered to in relations with Iran, the process will be much quicker and easier. I just want to recall that the goal of the JCPOA was precisely the fact that the Iranian nuclear program does not differ in any way from similar programs of any other participant of the NPT not possessing nuclear weapons. The same goal, that is to gradually restore the normal regime of cooperation with Iran, just as with any other member state of the UN, was pursued in other provisions of the pact, including the now lapsed special regime of the import of conventional weapons to Iran and from Iran. It's important that the appeal to member states to restore normal commercial cooperation with Iran, including with the use of the INSTEX mechanism and the channel of delivery through the Joint Commission of the JCPOA, are mentioned also in the current report of the Secretary General. But we hear from some colleagues the appeals that are opposite in meaning. That is to extend the restrictions on nuclear activity of Iran, to maintain the unilateral sanctions on the import of conventional weapons that are in contravention of Resolution 2231, and even veiled hints that the JCPOA should be reviewed or somehow expanded to include aspects of regional security. I want to remind you that the aim of Resolution 2231 was never the deterrence of Tehran. The goal was always about the final normalization of international economic and scientific cooperation with the Islamic Republic of Iran, including in the area of peaceful nuclear energy, after the issues that the IAEA had with regard to Iran were resolved. The final report on this topic was prepared in December of 2015, and its conclusions were endorsed in the corresponding resolution of the governing board of the IAEA. And precisely the resolving of any questions and issues to Tehran and the created regime of transparency of the Iranian nuclear program, first of all through the application of the additional protocol on agreement on safeguards between Iran and the agency, were the key non-proliferation achievement of the JCPOA. The problems in this area that we are seeing today were the direct result of the destructive actions of the United States in undermining the JCPOA. The cause and effect link here is precisely that. All steps by Iran to temporarily freeze its obligations are not some kind of willful violation, as some colleagues are trying to present it, but rather are a legitimate reaction to the non-compliance with the pact by the American side. This conclusion, although it's somewhat presented obliquely, is present in the report of the Secretary General. Unfortunately, a real revision of the decisions adopted by the previous U.S. administration we're not witnessing yet. In practice, the American side continues its policy of maximal pressure on Iran and continues to be in breach of Resolution 2231, including by maintaining the activity of unilateral restrictions and the regime of arms embargo against Iran, although all the restrictions under the UN have lapsed. Of course, it's unfortunate that the escalation has led to, inter alia, to significantly reduction of the verification efforts in the framework of the IAEA, but it's important to note that all steps by Iran can be reversed, and this has been confirmed more than once by the IAEA. No less important is that Iran continues its dialogue with the agency without rejecting its non-proliferation obligations. Mr. President, now a few words about the regional security in the Persian Gulf. This is a very important topic, but I want to stress that that is outside the framework of discussions on the JCPOA. This is probably discussion for the future when the functioning of the pact is fully restored. Our idea of launching a regional dialogue on security issues in the Persian Gulf is well known to you. We have described it in detail in October of last year in the course of a separate meeting of the Security Council under the Russian presidency. We believe that it's important to take concrete steps in strengthening mutual trust, preventing crises, and reducing the risk of military clashes, misunderstandings, and escalation. We could consider the experience of other regions in developing confidence-building measures. At the same time, issues of security in the Persian Gulf should be dealt with first and foremost by the regional states themselves. We noted a similar appeal by the Secretary General to the states of the region in its report to create favorable conditions for diplomatic efforts in Vienna and to refrain from provocative rhetoric or actions that could undermine it. And also the Secretary General's idea that issues related to the broader context of regional security should be considered without any linkage to the goal of maintaining the JCPOA and its achievements. Colleagues, what's necessary today more than ever, what's necessary is a calm, pragmatic discussion. This is not the time to up the ante or somehow fuel emotions even further. There are no alternatives of the JCPOA. We need to clearly understand that. I call all of you to just imagine a world where there's no pact. Would it be any safer for anyone than the current world? Fortunately, understanding the value of the JCPOA seems to unite all of us. So all efforts need to be focused on restoring the JCPOA. The Secretary General of the UN has made an appeal to that in his report. In practice, this means that the United States must immediately return to a full compliance with the demands of Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA, and Iran must immediately react to these steps and ensure the unfreezing of all the obligations that it suspended earlier. And first and foremost, in terms of ensuring transparency in its nuclear program and cooperation with the IAEA. The efforts of all the other parties to the pact is to cooperate in order to ensure convergence of positions. Our primary duty is to help our colleagues in Vienna. Russia is ready to do everything to achieve that. We count on the common sense and support of the other members of the Council. Thank you for your attention.